All right, this video is to talk about how you would use rounding in real world type of situations. When you encounter rounding in a math class, a lot of times what we're doing is we're giving you made up instances where we say, okay, round these numbers and then add them up, or round these numbers and then give me the amount that you would need to cover a cost for something. Or we say, okay, well, you're going to add the numbers up and then you round it off to a given number. So we kind of give scenarios which make you use your rounding skills, but they're not really how you would use it in the real world. What we're trying to get at in a math class and making you do rounding problems is just comfort level in doing an estimation. And what it's really used for is in the real world. For instance, let's say that you go to the store. You only have $20 in your pocket. You don't have a calculator, and you don't want to get up to the cashier and be embarrassed because you don't quite have enough money to pay for the groceries in your basket and have to decide what to put back. So you go along, and as you're shopping, you kind of keep a running tally in your mind of what you need to, or what your cost is going to be, so that you can see if you can pay for them all when you get up to the front of the line. So let's take a look at this list that I've made. I said we're going to go to the store, we're going to buy some milk and some bread and some cheese and some apples. And we want to know if we can pay for them all if the milk is $3.97, the bread's $3.56, the cheese is $8.09, and the apples are $4.37. So I have $20, right? So the first thing that comes to my mind if I'm really doing this in the store is I just round everything to the nearest dollar. And that way I know if I'm going to be in the ballpark or not. So let's really quickly just get that scenario out there and see what happens. Okay, so milk, if it's $3.97, what's the nearest dollar? 4, right? Good. Okay, if bread is $3.56, what's the nearest dollar? Well, again, that's 4, but we went up by quite a bit there. Keep that in the back of your mind. Cheese, if it's $8.09, that's right, it would be 8. And then $4.37, well, if it's $4.37, yep, that's right. 4 is to the nearest dollar. Now this one we rounded down, well, quite a bit, right? This one we rounded down a little. This one we rounded up quite a bit. We rounded up this one a little bit. So we're going to get a pretty good estimate here, aren't we? It's going to be really close. So let's see. 4 and 4 is 8. 8 and 8 is 16, and 16 and 4 is 20. It looks like we're going to be right at that $20 mark, but you might be a little bit uncertain, right? It looks like it's going to be $20, but if you're really super embarrassed by, not having enough money, you might go, ooh, that's just cutting it a little bit too close for my taste in this instance, and you might decide to maybe round it to the nearest 50 cent. Gosh, that's not something that we do in a math class, right? Round something to the nearest 50 cents. But isn't 50 cents fairly easy to keep track of because they're fives, and 5 plus 5 is 10, and 10 plus 5 is 15, and so on and so forth, right? So we get nice numbers to keep track of in our head. So let's keep that in mind and round these to the nearest 50 cents, which remember, it's either going to be 50 cents or it's going to be dollars. So $3.97, what would you round that to? Right, that would be 4.0. And 356, I would say that's 3.5, right, to the nearest 50 cents. $8.09 would be 8.0. And then $4.37, that would be 4.5. Now you see, this is a little messier to keep track of in your head, but the way I would keep track of it is I'd say, okay, well, the 4 and the 8, that makes 12, right? And the 3 and the 4, that makes another 7, and then these make another 50, or 50 and a 50 make another dollar, and so 12 and 7 is 19, and a dollar is 20. It looks like we're going to make it right in the ballpark. And that way we're still, we're not keeping exact track of these things, and we're still seeing we're going to be in the ballpark. So that's just a couple of ways we might use rounding. Now, here's another scenario where we might not want to round quite so close in, and where it's not going to be as big of a detriment if we're off a little bit. So let's say I'm pricing a home theater system. So I'm doing home theater equipment so that I can save my money to buy a system. And the costs are as follows. And how much would I want to save? So the TV costs $797.99. A sound bar cost $1,000 or $1,058.28. The rear speakers cost $318.15. The subwoofer costs $228.99, and a Blu-ray player costs $468.17. So, do you think that we'd want to round these to the nearest dollar like we did in the grocery store problem? No, probably not, huh? I mean, why would I want to go to the nearest dollar? I'm just saving money. Any money I save above and beyond what I need is kind of icing on the cake. I get to keep that later on. So where do you think it would be a good idea to round these? What seems comfortable? Do you think the nearest dollar would be a good idea? No, probably not, huh? I mean, you don't need it down to that. What about the nearest $10? No, probably not. So what I would look at here is I would look at the fact that we have hundreds in every single one of these. And because in every single number we have at least the hundreds place, that's kind of the best place to round them. And if every single number had thousands, I'd say probably rounding it to the nearest thousand is perfectly acceptable. So let's talk about if we rounded these to the nearest hundred here. So $797.99, that would be 800, wouldn't it? And $1,058.28, that would be 1,100. So you know about saying, if we're talking about hundreds, so we're just reading these two as this hundreds. Well, you can do that with the next two digits too. This number I call 1,100. All right, so $318.15, $300, right? $228.99, $200, right? And then $468.17, so $500. So now we can add these up pretty easily because look, these are all hundreds, right? So I'm only really just adding these up. 8 and 3 is 11, and 11 and 11 is 22. 22 and 2 is 24, and 24 and 5 is 29. So I need $2,900 approximately, right? Now we could put another level of complication in there too, because we could say, well, what about tax? Well, tax, is some crazy percentage number, but I always kind of think to myself, well, tax is approximately 10%, right? So approximately 10% of this moves the decimal point 2 places back to the right, doesn't it? So we'd pay approximately $29 for tax. So if I figure another $100 in there for tax and I save up $3,000, then I would be saving plenty of money to buy the things that I wanted and to buy or to pay for the tax as well. So saving $3,000 gives me a little bit of wiggle room in there, so that if I said, oh gosh, I forgot I need wiring for all of this stuff to be hooked together, hey, I can probably afford to buy that when I go to the store too. So that's just a little kind of introduction to how rounding would be used in the real world and how you are the master of the decision as far as where do you round things. But it definitely is your choice most of the time when you're in a real world scenario.